Hailing from Roanoke and now a cornerstone of Richmond's music scene, Jody Boyd is a multifaceted percussionist, composer, and producer. With a Bachelor of Music from Virginia Commonwealth University and graduate studies at the Eastman School of Music, his academic foundation complements his rich professional journey. When he isn't recording and playing music at his own studio, Red Amp Audio, Jody is performing in many different ensembles like Fighting Gravity and 64 Crowns. Let's take 5 and learn about this well-rounded musician. Hey, Jody. Thanks for doing this podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah. I've known you for a really long time, but
Yep.
I don't know everything about you, so we're going to ask you a few questions.
Oh, boy.
It's called Take 5. You know, Dave Brubeck would be happy, but
I like it.
here's my first question to you.
Okay.
How did you start in music? And then just kind of give me a timeline. Tell me everything.
I'm going to start really early. I'm going to start in kindergarten. Is that okay?
That's
Yeah.
really young.
This is really young. Yeah. So what happened was, is the little school that I went to where they were doing a musical, and they had a bunch of instruments that they were giving all the kids to be in this musical. And I saw this snare drum sitting over there, and I'm like, God, I want to play that drum so bad. And then the teacher hands me these like wood blocks, and I was like, what? I don't want the wood blocks. I want this drum. And this other kid that got the drum was like terrible. He had no rhythm. I'm just like, why did they give this kid this drum? So from that day, that experience was like, I am going to learn how to play the drums, and I'm going to do it. So that's when I started. And then I started taking lessons when I was in grade school, and I got into the band program when I was in the 5th grade with the, snare drum and bass drum and all that kind of stuff, and concert band. And then, after that, started getting into bands and rock bands. And I also played in symphony orchestras really young. I was the first student member of the Roanoke Symphony when I was in the 9th grade.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And boy, I have some stories about that, but we don't have to get into all that.
And so it's just percussion?
Yeah, this was at that time. And I was also learning piano.
Okay.
And then guitar came later. But yeah, drums were my main first instrument.
So when you were in kindergarten and you saw that other kid get the instrument you wanted to, and you said he had no rhythm, that was awesome that you could recognize that.
Oh yeah, it was like right out of the gate. I was just like, this guy is like, he was like all over the place, and I'm just like, I'm clicking my sticks, to whatever the piano player was. They had a, school piano player, and I was like, this, so how can you, he was just like flailing.
Was there a reason they let him play the snare? Was he
I
a
don't
friend
know.
of somebody?
They just picked him, and I was upset.
Now, was it a snare or a whole kit?
It was like just a snare.
Yeah. People don't realize it, but I guess the drums are probably the better one to get because your mom and dad probably wouldn't want you beating all over the house, right?
Right. Well, I started on pots and pans, literally. I had a pots and pans kit that I set up in my basement, and I would, one was like the ride cymbal and the other was the snare, and I would sit down and play along with, I remember I used to sit in the basement and play along with the Beatles. I remember playing Let It Be and all these,
Literally. And so all the pots, you found the different
Yeah, I found different
tones.
size pots to different, sounds.
And you have this internal sense of rhythm that's unlike most. I mean, you know how to keep a band on target with a load of energy.
Well, the reason I learned how to do that was I started playing in cover bands right out of college, and it was right when drum machines first hit. And what I would do is I would program the drum machine to play like the percussion parts, like congas or bongos and that kind of stuff. And then I'd play along with it. So that way we had like a percussionist in the band.
So that's almost like your original tracking.
Exactly. So yeah, so it's like, so that's click track. So you have to be right with the machine.
Yeah. So you're a freshman in high school playing in Roanoke Symphony Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you're from Roanoke?
Yep. That's where I grew up.
Yeah. And your mom and dad?
Yep.
The big old star down there.
That's right. The Mill Mountain Star.
So the people in that Roanoke Symphony, did they kind of know that you were a special creature?
They did, and it was really scary because, like I said, I was so young, and all those people in that orchestra came down from D.C. because most of those types of musicians will play in like the Norfolk Symphony, and then they'll play in the National Symphony in D.C., and then they'll play Roanoke, and then so as they kind of revolve between all those orchestras, and that's kind of how they make a living too. So
the directors have their core groups, but they pull in the outside crew.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you got your key first trombone, second trombone. Right. How many percussionists were there in that band?
In the Roanoke Symphony, there's probably 5 percussionists. There'd be a timpani guy, a mallet guy, from marimba and vibraphone or whatever, xylophone, bells, snare drum guy, and a guy that did traps like, triangle or crash cymbals or that kind of stuff.
Connections, I guess. Did anybody in there want to pull you around and play other places too? I mean, you're 9th grade. I guess your parents would have to give you permission to drive everywhere.
At that point, I was just doing that, you know.
And when you went back to the school after you've been playing in the Roanoke, because you probably played in high school, right?
Oh, yeah. I played in junior high and high school.
Was that a letdown after playing with the Roanoke Symphony?
No, I loved all of it.
You loved it all.
I was really lucky because at that point, educational facilities were very, very different as far as music. You could take a ton of music classes. So I was like in the jazz band, the symphonic band, the orchestra, the marching band, and then you could take music theory too. So I was like, by the time I was in high school, I was taking pretty much nothing but music classes.
So you pretty much just...
It was awesome.
You've been doing music since 5 years old.
Yeah.
Constant.
And
then I guess when you were a senior, everybody probably knows you're a great player. They're probably wanting you to go to your schools. Did you have to pick a lot of different areas? I mean, what school kind of stood out to you that you wanted to go to when you graduated?
Well, I had a really good teacher. His name was John Floyd, and he stuttered. He did, Jody, you need to practice more. So he would always, but he was a great teacher. He was wonderful. And he taught at Virginia Tech, and he really pushed me to go there. And I went there for about a year and realized I needed to go somewhere else. So I ended up transferring to VCU, and that was the best thing I ever did, because when I got there at that point, all those really great players that were there, that went on to have huge careers. I mean, like Steve Wilson, who ended up playing with Chick Corea, and Ronnie Jenkins, who ended up playing with Cyndi Lauper, and Bob Berg, the sax player that was in Miles Davis' last band. I mean, it was like those type of caliber of players were there, and I was just like, wow, okay, this is really, I got to practice even more now.
So I guess you did you have your own ensembles too that you would play out yourself? Were you in any of the jazz at VCU? It was the Jazz Orchestra One.
Yeah, I ended up my second year. I ended up getting in the Jazz Orchestra One because the really great drummer, he graduated. So I was.
Who was that?
That was this guy named Isaac Edgerton.
Okay,
he's incredible drummer.
Yeah,
killer drummer. But
you got all your different styles. What's your favorite style to play? I mean,
I like playing pretty much everything. At that point, I was playing a lot of the jazz stuff because that's what they did at VCU. It was definitely standard jazz kind of stuff, and so it was a lot of fun. But I realized that I needed to make money because I was running out of my college fund, and so I started playing rock bands and pop bands, and really started enjoying that. And I was like, wow, I can get paid and meet girls. This is really
girls,
good. And that's why I started getting away from the orchestra thing, because the orchestra stuff didn't pay as much, and there was not any girls for me.
That's too funny.
There were some, but they didn't want to talk to me.
So yeah, you used it as a woo.
Yeah, right. So I was like, this really makes more sense.
So you were at VCU how long, you think?
I did 3 years there,
and then
undergrad, and then I graduated, and then I went to
wait, 3 years?
Yeah,
and you graduated?
Well, I'd done 1 year at Tech.
Okay, dig.
And then I transferred.
I see what you're saying.
And then after I did that, I got a job. My first full-time paying gig was at King's Dominion, as I played in the country show over there.
Okay.
And so that was I did that for about a summer or half a year or whatever.
You weren't in that band that walked around the whole thing?
No, that was not me.
It was like a little pep band that they...
Yeah, I was in the country show. And then after that, I went to the Eastman School of Music and worked on my master's degree for about a year and a half. And then I decided I hated cold weather, and I couldn't. And it was like it would get dark every day at 2:00 in the afternoon and snow. It started snowing in September, and literally by the end of September, you'd be walking down the road because the school was in the middle of the downtown area. The snow would be piled up so high that you couldn't even see the street.
That's no fun.
It was depressing, and it was like get dark at
carrying drums and that kind of crap.
Oh yeah,
too?
And it was like 2:00 in the afternoon. It got dark because it's so far north. So your day was like only a few hours of daylight, and it was really depressing. So all you did was practice, which was good.
Yeah,
because that's all I did. I was practicing 9 hours a day at that point.
And then I guess you came back down south.
Yep, I decided I really liked Richmond. Well, then actually after that, I went to Cincinnati and worked for that same company that hired all the King's Dominion people, and I worked at Kings Island for about 6 months, which is kind of like King's Dominion. But I was in like 2 shows. I was in a jazz band there and the Oompa band.
The German music.
Yeah, it was some of that. Yeah.
Oompa,
yeah.
Well, what instruments do you play? I know you play the drums and you said the keys.
All the percussion. I play some piano, and later on, I really got really excited about playing guitar. So that's kind of been my later in life instrument, doing that. And then I'm doing a lot more singing in this one band that I play in. So that's really fun, and singing background vocals and some lead, and I'm trying to be as good as Chris.
Stop.
What instrument would you play if you had the time right now? You could pick up anything. What would you concentrate on?
Well, like I said, I'm really working on guitar. I'm really enjoying working on guitar.
Okay, so that's
just because it's something new. It's like I feel like I felt when I was back in high school, because it's like it's all.
It's that much. It's the curiosity.
It's just the all newness of everything, and like when you learn a new lick or a new whatever, or a new chord, it's like, wow, this is so cool. And on drums and percussion, I've been doing it for my whole life, so it's it's like I still love doing it, but there's that, you don't have that new thing always coming along
Yeah.
that you have when you're, really learning an instrument.
You told me something interesting one time because you're in the studio. You own one of the top studios around. He even has, what's that thing called? Atmos?
Dolby Atmos.
Dolby
Yeah.
Atmos. Yeah. You were like the only guy in town. But you were telling me that when you started playing piano, because when you're doing session work, you kind of sit down and you almost have to in your chair and then record yourself.
Right.
And it's a whole different act. But when you stand up.
Yep.
And that wasn't, I had never really thought about that. But then I said, I sit down and play the piano. It's a whole different scene.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's been my biggest accomplishment is to be able to stand up and play now when I play out live because I started out in the studio where everybody else starts out live. I'm totally backwards because I started playing guitar and figuring out, and I could punch in and I messed up, which was great, because you play a few bars and like, oh, okay, I'll just punch in and play a little more. But live, you got to stand up and you got to play the whole thing right. And so it's just like I came at it from a whole backwards angle, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And fun. But scary at the same time.
I mean, the first time I ever played with you, I had always heard of Jody Boyd. You were like the biggest guy at VCU when I was there. And then I got a chance. I left Fighting Gravity.
Right.
I got a chance to play with you, Jeff Nagel, John Wynn.
Right.
And who else? Chris Lowry. And we had a band called Junk Fu Buddha, which was really good. It's the first time I was like, holy cow, this is what a drummer feels like when he's kicking you in the ass, man. I was like, it's so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think.
You make it easy to sing. You have so many, you know how to subdivide a lot of grooves and put the right thing because these songwriters come at you with songs, but you're a key player because you can make or break the groove. You can change the whole groove. I was really impressed at that time.
Well, thank you. I think anybody in the band can wreck the groove. I've played, I'm not going to name names, but I've played in bands where the singer could actually wreck the groove because the singer would sing so far either ahead of the beat or behind the beat. You'd be like, wait a minute. And it's really interesting how one person can really wreck a groove.
Yeah.
In a band. I'm serious.
And you can't tell them all the time.
No, you can't.
You just have to smile and be friendly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just keep playing.
Your best band, I'd be curious to know, what was the best band you've ever played in that you had the most fun?
Let's think about that. Fighting Gravity.
No way.
Right now, yeah. I'm having the most fun right now.
That's amazing. Because you had to learn all these songs.
I know, and that's what has been fun because it's learning a whole new bunch of songs and having to be under the gun to learn them fairly quickly and go out. We've only played 2 gigs, and they've both been pretty big, big stages and a lot of people, and so that challenge has been really fun. And I love everybody in the band, and it's just been a great experience.
Browns Island last year.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to ramp up for that? Like, how was it? A month? 2 months?
We started practicing about March?
I thought it was like February.
It might have been February. Yeah, and we were practicing at least about once a week.
Yeah,
and that went all the way to July. Yeah.
Yeah, over at your place too. Which
is at the studio.
Yeah, I haven't.
Red Amp Audio.
It makes it easier because you can hear everything. We used to practice over at David Triano's house, and it was in one room, and everybody was playing as loud as they possibly could because they hadn't heard each other since the last week.
Right.
But yours actually, you can hear the space, and you can actually play songs because you know all the parts and how they're working out. That studio is gorgeous. If anybody has a chance to go look at it, it's
Red Amp Audio.
Red Amp Audio.
That was the first studio I've ever been in.
Really?
And it was amazing. It was like an anechoic chamber, right? Is that what they call it? Where you walk in and it's like quiet.
Oh, it's so quiet.
It's wild. And it's tall ceilings and you just get this awesome feeling walking in there. I wish I could play music because I would love to record in there.
Oh, it's so fun.
He's got the heavy doors.
Yeah. There's so much that goes into designing a place like that.
Yeah. Who did you had said you designed it after somebody's other studio?
Actually, the architect that designed it, his name is Peter Grunheisen, and my friend Butch Taylor, who was in the Dave Matthews Band, knew him because he had done all their studios. So he turned us on to him, and we got to, talking, and so he wanted to do ours. So he designed our place, and he had done like the Fox Newman scoring stage, Sony in Japan. He, all the Hans Zimmer studios. He's a really killer architect, world renowned.
That's
so
amazing.
We're really lucky to have him for our next studio that's getting ready to be built.
Yeah, tell us about that, Mr. Jody.
Look at me.
I love it. That was good. A good segue.
Well, we've been in this building downtown, and we bought the building back in, I guess, about 2008. And we built the studio in 2009. It took about a year for various reasons, which I'll not go into. The city and tax credits, all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so we've been there since Yeah, I think we opened in late 2009, and actually for about the past 5 years, this developer had started buying up all the buildings around us on this particular block, and it turned out he wanted to build a high-rise VCU housing facility, and he just finished one like 2 blocks down towards VCU. So for the past 5 years, he's been coming to us once a year and saying, "Hey, I really want to buy your building. I really want to buy your building." And then he would offer us some money, and we'd be like, "No, that's not enough." So finally, a few months ago, he finally came up with the right amount, and he bought our building and the one next to us at the same time. Because we talked to them, we're like, "Hey, if we try to sell as a pair, maybe he'll give us more money." And sure enough, it worked out. So.
Wow.
So that we're going to rent back from him while our new studio is being built down on Osborne Turnpike, and we have the same architect, Peter Grunheisen is his name, and he is working with us, and hopefully it's going to be finished before the end of the year.
And it's in walking distance from your home, I guess.
Yes, it's all going to be right there and all in one place. House and studio are 2 different buildings, but they're right next to each other.
And in the studio, it's not an 8-hour day. You've got at least 16 to 18 hours where you have to almost have it ready. I would be so nervous start having a millions plus studio, being able to get enough work. When do you finally get over to the point where you have broken even and making profit? I mean, I guess 2008. I guess it's plenty of time, but that would be terrifying.
Well, luckily, like I said, we were able to sell the building. I've been able to keep working the whole time, and once I move into the new studio, I'm going to be clear. So, I mean, it's taken a long time to break even.
What kind of work do you do in the studio?
Well, that's funny you should ask. A lot of different types of work. And that's really how we've survived. I mean, a lot of studios always were kind of snobby about, they'd only do certain types of work, like we're just a heavy metal studio, or we just do whatever, So that has not ever been our model. Has been anything audio. I mean, I'll do anything from books on tape. I'll do singer-songwriter projects. I'll do band projects. We do a lot of stuff for advertising, corporate video, audio for corporate. So it's really across the board. It's all over the place. So and that's how we've managed to survive.
And I guess the word of mouth travels. You get.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any advertising, and I'm booked up through the rest of the summer already.
Yeah.
So
I'm lucky.
So the Atmos that no one else does around here, like I've learned about that. That's pretty awesome.
It's very awesome.
It's mind blowing compared to like stereo, then Dolby Pro Logic, then Dolby Digital back in the day where you had the 5.1,
right.
and then you could do the 9.2 or whatever.
Right.
And the Dolby Atmos it's not just like stereo or whatever. It's each audio file has its own coordinates, right? For the room.
Yeah.
Your receiver decodes that room where it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, like our room is a 7.1.4 room, which means there are 7 speakers around. The 0.1 is the sub, and then the 4 are in the ceiling. And basically you can take, if like, let's say we did a mix in there's 2 rooms. The other room is just, we mix in stereo in that room. So let's say we have that session, that Pro Tools session that has all the different tracks in it. You would bring that into the room and say, okay, well, I'm going to, and you just decide how you want to spread it out. So a lot of times you'll maybe, put the reverb in the back speakers, and maybe you'll put an acoustic guitar on the left, and, and just start spreading it out. And I think the whole goal from the guys that are really, doing it on the big records, they're basically trying to create a dome where you're basically in the center of the band. That's kind of the idea. Unless you get really, like a lot of the modern pop stuff, though, they're taking it in a little different direction they're really, I mean, they're doing things where like the lead vocal will change places where usually it's right in front of you, but they're doing like, the delays will be swimming up here in the top speakers. And for me, it's almost like being in one of those, like, what are those, where you're in a ride at a park and there's like, you feel like you're falling and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's a little too much for me, but.
So is this the audience is audio only, no video for these?
This is all audio. Yeah, this is a new thing. The whole Dolby Atmos thing, of course, started in the theater. I think it was like 2015, 17, somewhere in there. And then the music thing, came in afterwards where they said, okay, we're going to start really working the music, and taking the stems and spreading them around for that. So that's how it kind of got going for music.
So they master. So do you have a band or a group that comes in with the band, and then you do it in stereo, but do you also just do it in Atmos also, or do they have to like say, I want this because it's a pain in the rear end?
You do. Well, the way people are doing it now, they'll do a stereo and Atmos, and like for example, Apple Music, they have a Dolby Atmos, playlists, and if you get on Apple Music, you actually get more royalties if you have Atmos mixes, for them to play, and they pay more for that than they do the stereo mixes, because they're really Apple's really behind Atmos. They're really pushing it within there, and they have partnered up with Avid, which is Pro Tools, and the whole technology has been built with Dolby and Apple and those guys.
So your intended audience is, I guess, it steps it up from the car to your home theater. And don't they have some like headphones now that have Atmos built in?
Well, that's funny you say that too. So basically, after you finish mixing in Atmos, it makes a file, and that file knows what type of playback system you have. So if you've just got like a sound bar, it'll spread it out just on your sound bar. Or if you have 5.1, it'll split it out to play in 5.1. So it knows, which is really cool. And like you say, the headphones, that was really the reason I got into it, because I took a trip to Boston a few summers ago, right before we got into it, and I saw every kid from Berkeley wearing those Apple headphones, which basically play Dolby Atmos over headphones. And I went to the Apple store after that, and I was like, man, this is incredible. And if you go there, they'll just hand you a pair of those headphones, and you hook them right up to your iPhone, and then there you go, bang, you're listening to Dolby Atmos. And I was like, oh my God,
And I guess it costs more now to kind of use that and do it, but you think it's ever going to get to the point where, the cost for musicians to record in Atmos is going to go down?
Well, it's not really. You just take stuff that you recorded in a studio, and you take all those stems and you spread them around. So it's really not, you're just paying for that part of the mixing for, moving things around and then mastering it or whatever. But
is it a fairly expensive board?
No, it's not. No, it's still just in Pro Tools. It's all digital.
Wow.
So it's really cool. It's a wonderful thing.
That's fascinating. So do a new agent or a new group or a band that wants to come out, what is their intended audience? Is it all, they just know it's going to go digital, or are a lot of them going to put on vinyl, or
they do all that? They really, most of the stuff that we've been doing in the past few years, they're doing everything. They're doing everything they can to get out there to try to rise above because there's so much out there, so much material. So they'll do the Atmos thing. They'll do vinyl. This girl in town, Mackenzie Rourke, she just finished a project with us, and she just did a total vinyl pressing, and hopefully we'll get into some Atmos stuff. And she's, but that's kind of what you got to do to get it out there, is to, as much as you can.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that vinyl's making a comeback. My daughter, who's 11 years old, wanted a record player for Christmas, so of course I got her one, and she digs just sitting there. Like, in the old days, we would put a CD on or a tape on, and you didn't have the luxury of making a playlist and switching it immediately. Making a playlist back then was a lot harder.
Yeah.
But generally, you would listen to a CD or an album from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And so that leads into a question: What album can you listen to start to finish? That's off the top of your head. I know it's probably lots of them. I have a lot of them, but what was the last one do you remember listening to from start to finish?
You mean recently?
The last one you can remember.
Wow, let's see.
Or that's top of your mind, because like Weezer, the Blue Album,
right?
Or Green Day, Dookie for me, or Fighting Gravity.
Let me think about it. I can't answer it. I can think of all the things that I like to listen to the full album through, but I can't think of what the last one I listened to. Because I think as I get older, I really like to go back and visit the stuff that that I grew up with, because that's they say that from age 15 to like 25 or 30, that music is always going to resonate with you for the rest of your life.
And that's Weezer for me, and Dookie. And I had one CD. I asked this a while ago. I can't remember a new album that has come out where I've listened to it from start to finish, but like a lot of the Weezer ones that have come out, I can listen to because they make them for that. But also the new Post Malone. I just realized this the other day, that the country album he did, the crossover, that was cool. I listened to that from start to finish.
Cool.
That was it's unique.
Right.
Are you self-taught, or did you have mentors when you were for the recording side of things?
I did have a mentor, Eric Heiberg, who he's an incredible keyboard player. He's an incredible guitar player. He's an incredible singer, and I first knew of him when he played in the Robin Thompson band back in the 80s, and I was very, very young. And I remember seeing those guys play live, and I was so impressed with him. And then probably maybe 8 years after that, I was playing in a band, and he ended up coming and subbing on keys in the band, and I was like, "Oh my God, Eric Heiberg is going to play!" It was like meeting a rock star for me, because
it's probably like I was when I met you. Like, oh my God!
Oh man, well, it was that kind of thing. And then, and so after that, we kind of see each other every now and then. And he worked at a studio, and this was right when the whole Pro Tools thing was starting with computers. And he had me come play on a session, and I was watching him, and I'm like, "Wow, man, this is incredible!" And he was at that time, it was a combination of analog stuff, like they'd use multi-track tape and also the computer stuff. So it was kind of a hybrid, but he was doing all that. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And he's like, yeah, you just ought to go buy yourself an Apple Power Mac. And, which I did, Power Mac 7200 and, mess around with it and see what you can do. So he would always call me to play drum sessions because at that time there was a lot of jingle work in Richmond and I was playing sessions like at least 2 or 3 times a week on drums. And I was making a good chunk of my living doing that at that time. So, and it was with him. I played on everything he did for, 4 or 5 years. And then he finally ended up hiring me because I'd go home and work on stuff and I'd go ask him questions when I'd have a session. I'm like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And then finally I got to where I was, getting okay with it. And then he ended up hiring me. So once I got a job at his studio, they ended up doing a lot of post-production for television spots. Huh. So I really learned a lot about that. And I worked for him for about 4 years. And then, I ended up getting a job, up in DC mixing the show America's Most Wanted as a cop show.
Oh, yeah.
And so that really taught me how to go fast because what would happen is I'd go there on Wednesday. I'd drive up to DC where John Walsh was the guy. He was the head host guy and they had a studio up there in Springfield. So I'd show up on Wednesday and they had a whole Pro Tools rig and everything there. And they would wait till the last minute to give everything to you to work on because they wanted to get the latest news on the show. So they'd finally hand you everything and they'd be like, go. So you'd work really hard for like 2 days you'd have to do, sound design, sound effects or whatever, usually lots of gunshots, it's a lot of drama, TV, cop drama. So you get it mixed and at 5:00 on Friday, Fox would call you up and they had this special telephone line where you'd basically hit play and they could watch it in real time, like a mile away. And they'd say, okay, stop at 1 minute and 20 seconds and turn off the gunshot. And I'd do that. And that's how they tweak the mix. And then as soon as we were finished, in about an hour, I'd have to ship the file to them right away. And then it would go right to television. It was very stressful.
Awesome.
But I learned so much by doing that for about a year. And it was a great experience.
Yeah. We always ask this question to most musicians. I already know the answer to this because would you consider yourself a professional?
Yes.
And duh, you make all your money doing music. You know how to play all these instruments. It's like you're the consummate.
Well, it's not just music though. I mean, it's technology, and the whole computer thing is a big, and knowing how to run an analog console. I think that I feel really lucky that I came up during both analog world and digital world, and learning both of those because my studio is built around both of those. I mean, I've got an analog console, but I've got all the computer bells and whistles too. And that's kind of that's what most people do now.
Yeah. I guess
that are pros.
Yeah. The analog kind of taught you how to master everything. And then the digital just made it easier. You could push a button where it took you 10 minutes to do this on analog.
Right.
It's just like, okay, I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
I got to take a drink of this.
So back in I want to say like the 90s, how big was your industry in Richmond? Were there a lot of you guys doing the jingles and doing the radio edits?
Because it was definitely bigger. Definitely.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
And the whole thing started happening where everybody wanted quick and cheap, and that's the way it is now too. Especially a lot of times in the advertising world, in the mid-level stuff. It's kind of like I like to describe it as if you think about Atlantic City, you go right to Atlantic City, and there's all these beautiful casinos on that one street, just like Vegas. And then the next block over here is poverty. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like the music business. And it's also kind of like the studio business where there is that upper level work, but it's really hard to get. Only a few people get that. But back in the 90s, there was a lot of everything, and people were spending more money on, what we did.
Because there were a lot of radio stations, and I think they've all been gobbled up.
Yep.
Like I
Channel.
was over by Moorfield or somewhere recently, and I saw the K95 vans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the vans have changed in 20 years. They're the same vans.
Yeah.
But they're all, iHeart and all the big companies own them now. So
exactly.
do they not do any of the editing or maybe even have any shows that are local?
Probably
are there
not.
any local guys?
Not much, no.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's just unless it's like college radio or independent radio, it's like you say, it's all corporate and they play the same 10 songs every hour. Then that's programmed by whoever, Clear Channel or whoever it's
AI.
Yeah, right. AI. Now you're exactly right. Yeah.
And Jody, I mean, you have to listen to music daily for 12 hours. Your ears must be fried at the end of the day.
They are sometimes.
Like you can't even.
I do try to listen quietly as much as I can.
Right.
Like if I'm doing a mix of a song, I'll only listen maybe when I really think I've got it right. That's when I'll turn it up, and I only listen for a minute, and I'll turn it right back down. And that's how I try to save my, sanity and my ears.
So when you're doing a project, or a piece. We recorded some video today, and I have to watch he was doing it. He did it in one take. It was awesome.
Nice.
But I still have to edit it a little bit. And I have to listen to the same thing over and over and over. For a song that's 3 minutes and you really want to master the heck out of it, how many times do you have to listen to a song?
Oh God, a lot. Because especially if you're tracking every piece of it, so you start out with the drums and the bass and maybe a guitar player or whatever, and track in that's your original pass of, and then you build on top of that and keep adding things. And a tracking session usually is at least a day for 5 or 6 songs all day long, hearing the same thing over and over because you do multiple takes of each song. And then after that, you have people coming in to do overdubs. And finally, when all the overdubs are done, you do the vocals, and there's a lot of then background vocals. And then you start mixing, and then you have to figure out, okay, some of this needs tweaking because it's either Russian or dragging, and they didn't quite play well enough with the click. And so there's the editing process, like what you're talking about, and or maybe you're comping a vocal take together where take 1, the verse sounded great, but then take 2, the chorus was better. So you put those together, things like that. And then you might have to tune the vocals, which we do a lot of that now with our friend Autotune or other software.
When did that start?
Oh God, that's been around forever.
When did it become mainstream?
Probably the 90s.
Really?
Yeah. Wasn't it I think there was that Cher song, and T-Pain was the one that used what they call the Autotune effect, but it was that
Believe.
Yeah, yeah, right. And then what was his T-Pain thing? It was, but that became like a cool thing. But it was
my daughter had that mic.
An accident. Yeah,
when she's singing, it's like he's yodeling and singing at the same time.
Right, yeah, that was
his little semitones.
Right. Yep,
it's hilarious.
But
I was fascinated. You listening, you don't always get feedback, and when you do, you're like, I wonder how good it is, because after a while you're good,
right,
and you're getting paid for it. But you're like, okay, but you went to Abbey Road Studios and studied with who? Tell me about that, because that would be something that you're finally getting some real feedback from a guy who has no interest in what you're doing, but can really listen with a good ear.
That was an incredible experience. I was we were actually working on a personal project with this band that I play in, and we did 5 songs. No, we did close to a whole project. I think it was like 9 or 10 songs.
What's the band?
64 Crayons.
Cool.
Yeah. And our friend Sully at the time we'd written a lot of songs together and recorded them and mixed them. And we were planning this trip to London. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could master this stuff at Abbey Road? Wouldn't it be great? So I was just like, I started doing some research, and I got a hold of them, found out what it cost. And I'm like, is there any way we could work with Miles Showell? Because Miles Showell is the guy who does all of the Beatles remasters. Wow. And I mean, he's like the guy. He works with Giles Martin on all that stuff. And so she's like, well, his schedule's really busy, but I don't know, when are you going to be here? And I said, we're going to be there June, whatever it is. He's like, well, he does have this one day where he's open, and I can sell it to you right now if you want it. I'm like, I'll take it. So sure enough, I walk in, and I get to Abbey Road Studios and walk through the door. Mar and I take a picture. Standing in front of Abbey Road.
Was that expensive?
It wasn't as bad as you would think it was. It was. I mean, it was. It was like going to a mastering guy. It was a pro mastering guy, but it wasn't any worse than anybody else that I'd worked with before. But man, it was. You walk in and you see all the stuff, and he comes down and meets us, and he's really nice, and I'm nervous because I'm like, I'm going to give this guy my stuff, and he's going to put it on. He's going to be like, oh my God, this is terrible. And I was so nervous. So we sat down, and he puts on the first tune, and we're listening for a couple seconds. I'm like, man, that sounds pretty good in this room. To me, it was, already I was like, okay, yeah, I think my mix sounds good. And I will never forget, he turned around, he's like, this is going to be a really easy day, chap. This is great. I'm like, wow. That was like the best.
Compliment.
That was the best. And then it was, he was like, he'd do a few things and do a few tweaks. And I'm like, man, it sounds fantastic. And he was like, well, the mixes were good. I'm like, okay. Validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of carries you on to present day.
Right. It does make you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So when the masters, that you said something where he remasters the originals.
Yeah.
When it comes to you guys doing something, what product do you give the client?
Well, it depends on what they want. It depends on if they want me to master or if they want somebody like him to master. And I always try to recommend to go to a mastering guy, because it's always great to have a second set of ears. Sometimes, because it's weird, because sometimes they'll end up liking what I did more than the mastering guy did. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's just everybody's ears are different.
Because you don't have a person that tracks. You kind of track everybody's stuff.
Yeah, and I can do some mastering too, but I'm not a mastering guy, but I mean, I know how to do some mastering, but I don't call myself a mastering guy. I'm a mix engineer.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't want to pay for that, and they want me to say, like, well, let's hear what you do with it. And I'm like, okay, so I'll do my thing. And then they're like, 9 times out of 10, they'll be happy with it.
Yeah.
But I always try to push them into having another set of ears at the end of the trail.
Yep.
So this is mundane and nerdy, but how do you deliver the product? Is it like on a USB drive? Is it on the internet?
It's all file based. Yeah. I mean, I could send you a file, everything is file based.
That's how they do it.
Yep.
There's not like a special secret, because back in the old days it was tape, right? The 4-track,
right.
they'd
send you either a cassette or a CD or whatever, but it's all, I mean, I can't remember last time I made a CD at all, or everything's file based.
I have nothing to play a CD.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Except if you have an Xbox,
True. Or PlayStation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you ever been on the road with a band?
Off and on a few times. Yeah. There was a guy that I used to, actually a guy from, do you remember Randy Perkins?
Yeah. The Randy Perkins project.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was back in the 90s, and he got a record deal. He had moved to Nashville, and he got a record deal on what's the bass player's name? Gary Talent, bass player in Springsteen's band. He had a label back at that time, and Randy got signed to his label. And at the last minute, he had another drummer he was working with down there, and at the last minute, the guy bailed. So I went down there and did the CD release party, and I actually got to play with Gary Talent, and George Marinelli was the guitar player who actually was in Bruce Hornsby and the Range and Bonnie Raitt's band. In fact, he'd been in Bonnie Raitt's band for 30 years. He's a killer guitar player.
Wow.
But yeah, so we did a little short tour, and that was a pretty interesting experience. That was one of the, and then I used to do a lot of gigs with bands that would go out on the road and do like a hotel circuit. Back then you would play these big lounges where you'd play like a dinner set, and then you'd come back and play a whole night of dance stuff, and you'd just be there for like 6 nights in a row. Or ski resorts. We'd go and do like in the winter, we'd go hit all the ski resorts and stay there for a week, and and you ski for free, eat for free, and you get paid, and you play music. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Those were the days. That was back in the 90s too, because that stuff is kind of all dried up.
Yeah.
I feel bad for musicians today because it's so hard to find places to play.
Yeah, especially original music. It's a bear.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And those,
because that's what we had to deal with.
Or
when
even covers.
Yeah.
It's hard
right.
anywhere now. It's really tough.
Yeah, and people do want to shortchange you. They don't realize all the hard work that you put in.
It's like the best paying gigs are the wedding band gigs where you go play Sally's wedding, and
you told me one time, I remember you said, I don't want to do any more corporate gigs for a long time. Now I know you'd like to do them, but you said, I threw my tux up against the wall.
No, I don't have a tux anymore.
You did.
I burned it.
You burned it. That's funny.
I literally did. There was a burn barrel going out in the back of this one country club, and I walked in there and I just dropped it in there. That was it.
You had to tell the guys, hey, this is it. My last show.
I'm done.
At least you didn't burn your drums.
No,
we had another podcast of a fellow that recently has passed away, but his first wife burned his drums.
Wow.
Yeah, burned them. And she actually took him to the drums and showed him.
Oh my God.
And they were given to him by his grandparents.
Oh.
It was tough. And he said, I'm going to have to walk. He must have walked 4 or 5 miles to his house because he would have killed her.
Oh my gosh.
That's
terrible.
It is terrible.
Well, she killed his mistress.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Wow.
He says she didn't like his mistress. So.
Wow.
Were the drums.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, I had another friend that got stabbed because of that.
Yeah. All right. Stabbed. That could lead to this story.
Okay.
What's your favorite story from the road? I guess a stabbing wouldn't be your favorite story, but
favorite story from when I was playing on the road?
Yeah, something that really stands out that
okay, I got
it can be funny, it can be serious, it can be anything.
Most of mine are funny. I like to remember the funny stuff.
Cool.
So that same tour I was telling you about, Gary Talent didn't go play he ended up not being able to go on the road, so they hired this young kid. And we were playing a lot of clubs. They were original music clubs. And this particular guy, Randy Perkins, he was always like, if the audience wasn't paying attention or, giving him some love back, he would let them have it in kind of a weird way. And it always made me uncomfortable. But he would be like, he's like, come on, this is good music. You guys, he would get upset.
Randy would say that?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. So anyway, we're playing at one of these clubs, and it's like, we were playing songs and the band was playing great, but it was like these people they had no clue because the record hadn't come out really,
Right.
So people didn't really know the material, and we were playing nothing but that material. We weren't playing any covers at all. If we'd been smart, we would have thrown some covers in there to try to win over the crowd, as you know how that works.
Yep.
So we start doing this, and there's this really young bass player, and Randy at one point looks over at the bass player and says, "Get down on the floor and start spinning around and do that thing that you do." And literally, the bass player just drops to the floor and starts spinning around like this to try to get the crowd to, and of course, people are just looking at him like, this is nuts.
That is too funny.
It was really weird.
That's a great story. You have so many. I know.
Can I tell one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
The best one of all is, I call it the Vietnam story, where we went down to Fayetteville, North Carolina to play at this big Army base. It was a big festival. And we get there. First, we drove all night, and we couldn't find anywhere to stay. So finally, at 6 o'clock in the morning, we found the Roach Motel, and me and my buddy checked in. And within 5 minutes, we were literally covered in fleas.
Shut up.
The room we were in was just flea infested. We were like, he had gone to take a shower, and I'd gotten into bed, and all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, we're both screaming bloody murder because we're both just covered. So this is like 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is 6:30 by this point. We go to the local McDonald's because our show wasn't until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we sat at the McDonald's with no sleep because we'd driven all night from another gig. Slept, no sleep. Sitting at the McDonald's, we ate a lot of Egg McMuffins, and then we finally go over to the show on this Army base, and we set up our gear. It's a beautiful outdoor stage, big, huge area, and it was just like, this is going to be fun. So we're like, it's getting closer and closer to the show, and there's like, where's the sound system? And so, it keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and, they're trying to get a hold of the guy who produced the show or whatever, and they can't get a hold of him. And so it's like a half hour before the show, and there's no sound system. And they've got, there's supposed to be 5,000 people showing up for this thing. So sure enough, they open the door and these people are flooding in, and we're like, there's no sound system. So finally, somebody at the Army base goes, I know what we can do. And he goes down to like the little pool hall or whatever, and he finds a realistic mic and 2 small speakers. And
it's like karaoke.
And we were actually backing up this guy, Archie Bell,
I know him. Yeah.
Archie Bell had a hit called Do the Tighten Up back in the 60s, and we were backing him up. This was a horn band.
Yeah.
And we start playing the first song, and people start throwing stuff at us and booing. And within like 15 minutes, the place is totally cleared out. And we just packed our stuff up and got in our cars as quick as we could.
Oh my gosh.
I thought we were going to get shot because it was like, these people paid to get in, and we're up there with no sound system.
Good grief. I
So
want
we
to
call
think
it Vietnam. Instead of Fayetteville, we got it Vietnam. True story.
That is crazy.
And then I saw a naked man one time walking down Interstate 85 at 4 o'clock in the morning when I was going home from some gig from like Charlotte, North Carolina.
Buck naked?
He was totally naked. And he was like in the middle of nowhere walking down 85, and I'm riding with my buddy. And I look over at him and I'm like, was that a naked man on the street? And he's like, yep, that was a naked man.
Oh my gosh.
I love being on the road. It was awesome.
Route 85 is so funny. We were following a truck one time, and it was a cow truck, and the gate came open, and all of a sudden this cow's flying out across the field.
Oh my God.
It was pretty funny. It's like, yeah, I guess
Oh, wow.
it'd be a comp loss.
Wow. Did it hit your car?
No, it just, but it would scare. I don't think the thing made
That
it.
would
They
total your car.
Yeah, he didn't hit us, but we saw it, and the door was open. The guy didn't know, but we had to go catch him. I think he finally realized it, but we've lost some of the cattle.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
it was a weird one.
That is weird. Sheesh.
Well, Jody, this has been fun.
Yeah.
There's one question we always ask people, and you actually hold on. Oh, where can we find your music? And tell me the names of the bands that you're playing in now.
Well, of course, Fighting Gravity there is everywhere, right? Because you're in the band. You're in Fighting Gravity.
I'm into Fighting Gravity.
Yeah, so that's all over the place, and I listen to it all the time because I'm still trying to learn the music.
Yep.
So that's everywhere. Another band I'm in right now is called 64 Crayons, and we have a music video that's out there on YouTube, and then I think we're on Apple and Spotify, and we've got some of the songs the album that never got released from Abbey Road, but maybe one day we'll release it. But that has a few songs out, and so yeah. But then there's a lot of commercials that you'd never know that I did that have music behind them.
You did the whole Virginia Lottery. Give the gift of scratchers.
Oh,
you did that one too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there was a lot of them. Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah, I actually sang on that.
Virginia's winning numbers. Yeah. That was another one that they played on the news when they draw I did that one a long time. That was on for like forever. Yeah, the scratchers one you're talking about, I would pay for Christmas every year because you get residual money, with every time they use it. So there'd be a nice mailbox check that would show up. And it went on for almost 10 years that I would get a check every Christmas.
Because you'd always give me my check. Yeah,
right.
You were very nice.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do it.
That was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Pay the people that played on it.
Yeah, I think that's what Star Wars.
No, the music business would never have done that.
Right.
They would have kept all the money for themselves.
I think the guy that did the Star Wars stuff, John Williams, he got it so that all those people always made royalties.
Right.
Not that it was a lot, but they were always making royalties. So that's really
That was the cool thing about Stevie Ray Vaughan too, because he was one of the only guys who said, "You are not going to sign me to a record label unless you sign my band."
wow.
Because usually they only sign the lead person. And
Yeah.
the band was kind of hung out to dry.
Yeah, well, that's a good person.
Well, 64 Crayons, I've seen them. I've seen you guys.
Oh, okay.
Because it was at a,
I bet you hated us.
no, I think, because Chris was, actually it was Garrett said that, hey, he brought us there to see you at
Oh, okay.
And you
shrimp
took a
boil
picture,
place.
you sent it to me.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, that's
'Cause you said you knew
Eric
them.
it was just you, Marna, which is your wife.
Right.
And Eric, I think it was a
right.
trio. That
Yeah,
day.
sometimes we do it as a trio or a duo or whatever. You know, we can do up to 7 people.
It was a Bull and Bay, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, boy. Well, yeah,
That was
that's right.
fun.
Sully came in at night and played with
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
But where can we see you anytime soon?
Oh God, we're playing a lot in May. We're playing. Let's see, this weekend we're playing for this outdoor thing called Wolfstock, and there's several bands, but it's all about dogs. I mean, they've got all kinds. They're having a dog parade. We did it last year. It's really fun.
awesome.
I love dogs. So
do too.
that's this weekend. But there's a place that used to be called Sloop John B. We're playing there next weekend, and I think it's called the. Gosh, I can't think of the name of it. I'm terrible. I'm sucking. It's over there on top of Regency Mall. It's a big. You know what I'm talking about?
I've
Tin
been
Pan?
there.
No.
No, it's not the Tin Pan. It's up on, but there's a rooftop. Big. It's really nice out there. It's fun, but I can't think of the name of it because they changed the name. It was Sloop John B, but now it's something else. So there's there. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff this summer.
And then May 10th,
Yeah, Fighting Gravity.
Fighting Gravity.
That's going to be the biggie.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're playing in Reston somewhere too after that.
Yeah,
aren't we?
in June.
Is that in June? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if
So-
it's completely confirmed, but it's definitely
Right.
going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right, Jody, fill in the blank. I blank music.
I love it.
There you go. You're easy. It's obvious you do. You love
do.
everything about it.
I do. It's fun. I just have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Jody.
me.
We really appreciate it. This
Thanks
was
for
fun.
the fine beverage too.
My pleasure.
All right.
Take it easy.